Technology is not a product, it's a story. And what is the story we want to tell? Women drive 80% of purchases across demographics. Who's driving culture? As Black and brown communities, the consumer has vastly changed. This will be the future. Gaming, metaverse, virtual worlds is 1000% going to happen. We're in a creators economy, but we're also in an attention economy. And who is holding the attention?
Hello. Hi, Simone.
Hello.
Today we have Simone Berry from Miami, right? So sunny Miami. So it's so nice to have you actually on the show. Such an influential woman, a speaker at major conferences as well. By the way, just was in Web Summit as well here in Lisbon, where I am right now located. And so you've been chosen also Vogue Top 100 Innovators. Woohoo! So such a great achievement as well. So inspirational leader, founder, creator as well. So it's really, really nice and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing, and we always want to support other women within the space and make sure that we all have a voice.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you so much. So you've been 15 years in fashion industry, growing brands to 70 million in volume, in sales volume, right?
Million.
Oh, okay. Yeah, also mentored to startups through Farfetch Dream Assembly, also Outlier Ventures. Wow, this is amazing. And recently in 2021, you co-founded also POC Lab, which is a Web3 creative innovation studio that works with major consumer brands. And I would love to hear much more from you about this. I think, yeah, it's incredible work that you're doing. But first, let's just start with a little bit of, basics. So as a creator, why Web3 is actually important for creators and how you would transform from being a creator to the founder as well, your career.
So I think that when Web3 kind of arose in my life, it was also during a time that I wanted to get out of fashion. So I really wanted to pivot and I wasn't really sure what I really wanted to do. And then COVID hit. So I was on Clubhouse. I think there's a lot of stories on how Clubhouse was really relevant to changing a lot of directions. And I would go into these rooms, and I was already an early investor into crypto. I like anarchy, and it seemed like it was anarchy, like breaking down man and having more freedom. So I'd invested, but I never really felt a connection to it other than the fact it was disruptive. I didn't see from a consumer side or from my skill set how it would really kind of apply to me. And honestly, I didn't even understand fully the blockchain. So when we started with Clubhouse and I was going into these rooms and they were classifying it as Web3, which, to be very honest, my auntie always says it. She's like, I didn't know there was a Web 1 or a Web 2, but Web3, so it's kind of all right, it's Web3. And then Metaverse and NFTs. And there was a wonderful woman, Lady Phoenix, that really mentored me and explained to me and was so relevant. And it was like an unlock. Originally, I worked in urban fashion very early in my career. It was brands that were led by Black and brown teams. It was really built into hip hop, and the look wasn't always deemed as fashionable. Back then, the term would be really ghetto. So it was from the hood, and it wasn't validated until I started seeing other cultures coming in and other faces coming in, and then all of a sudden it evolved into streetwear, and luxury brands are all about it. And those brands that were started from Black creators and through Black culture kind of just disappeared. And when the idea of NFTs and the idea of Web3, I was like, we can actually finally monetize on our biggest asset, which is creativity. Groups, especially Black culture and especially the Black community, creative has always been our value asset, but we have not been able to monetize it. And my brain just immediately clicked. This is an opportunity for us to now monetize on creativity and not always have it to be validated by other groups. So I think that resonated with me, especially because of my past future understanding that kind of relevance and coming from a fashion place. The technology was very confusing, and I was, again, very lucky to have Lady Phoenix that explained it to me as a 2-year-old. And I think that also kind of foundationally moved me forward and my co-founder to think that we really need to make this more accessible. My first NFT conference, I have to say, I think I sat there dumbfounded for the longest time, because my understanding is equality and blockchain is all about allowing everyone access and the decentralization of power. And I always thought Satoshi was a woman because it comes from a very feminine energy of being able to bring everyone in, and almost the disillusion of one central power. And then I walked in and I was like, so to me, it was just diverse and exciting. And I walked into a conference and it was just pretty much all white straight males. And I mean, in Clubhouse, it was a lot of that also, but I think it's a little bit harder when it's just audio and then you're actually sitting in it. And I think the first conference, I just walked around and said hello to every woman, every Black woman, anybody that I saw of color, and started introducing myself. And after that conference, I was just struck by the fact that if this is who is creating for end users, it's just going to be the same thing over and over again. It's very challenging, if you know one experience, to create for a larger end user. And this technology needs to reach everyone. The people that it will best assist and reflect, just from even the crypto side, these are the global majority. These are people of color. These are the groups that are really shifting and moving culture. So, and women, like, we need to be able to own the development so that we are creating for a larger population and end users. So POC we've co-founded it, was founded with the mission of ensuring that we are advancing the visible representation and accessibility of this technology to Black and Brown, women, LGBTQAI+, and disabled. We really just want Web3 to improve on what we know didn't work in Web2, and ensure that as we're moving forward, everyone is reflected in this technology. Everyone has a space and feels seen in this technology.
Yeah, I feel like that's also like why I'm in Web3, because like I'm also coming from disadvantaged background as well, and also being a woman, I can see that how blockchain actually can really change the way you perceive the world as well, the way you perceive who is the end user. And what you've been saying about the conferences, it's unfortunately, we still need to have a little bit of work on that. And what you are doing actually is amazing. Yeah, tell a little bit, how did you start it, POC Lab? How did you find your co-founder as well? And what was like the turning point for you both, just to say, okay, let's do this?
One, I think it's getting a little bit better marginalized. We have to take our wins when we can. So from when I started to now, we're definitely seeing far more intention. And I think that's just also reflective of the fact that we need to if we're trying to onboard masses, we can't just reflect and get rid of 83% of the population, which is the global majority, people of color, women, LGBTQAI+. We dominate a huge portion of demographics. So we can't be isolating. I think that was really what drove us. We are not seen here. We did not feel comfortable at the conferences, in certain meetings. I think in the beginning, I was consulting with a few brands, and people would literally speak through me on calls. And I was just, after everything that has already been happening and social reckonings across, technology to me, and this is really important, technology is not a product. It's a story. And what is the story we want to tell? And we wanted to tell a story of accessibility, visible representation, of education, being allowed to have more groups and allowing them to participate in a way that felt safe. Accessibility, social impact is success impact. And we understood that. Akbar and I were friends before. I think that Web3 brought us together. I was helping with his other company, consulting. And we just really wanted to make an impact. We had the incredible support of Animoca and Sandbox. So our first experience was with NYX for Pride. It was Valley of Belonging. Sandbox created an entire week that was really committed to belonging and bringing in new groups, LGBTQAI+, Black and Brown communities, and really celebrating our diversity. That then moved into the investments. And I think that the teams and the groups like Test Ventures, Sandbox, Animoca, Concrete Rose, we're really proud that our cap table is also very reflective of our mission. We wanted to ensure that at every point that we are standing by what we are trying to do with the technology. So the reflection of our team, the reflection of our cap table, and all of them, I have to say, was very impressive, because our business model is not fundamentally typical of what we're trying to do. We are selling the reality of, if you are an inclusive company, you will be successful. And thankfully, we're proving that our performance has been incredible. So it's exciting. And they really invested in our passion and in our dream, and the fact that they want to ensure the ecosystem is reflective, that diversity and inclusion is top of mind. Animoca invests in probably the most female founders, and they're continually committed to continue their investment. Sandbox has always been supportive of us. Valley of Belonging, we just did our second version. So Test Ventures, obviously, she's a female-run and led VC. She's very supportive of women in the community. Concrete Rose is a little bit separate, but they focus on Black and Brown communities, more technology. It was Web3 wasn't really a part of their portfolio. So being able to kind of create and inspire people to see that there's so much opportunity here. And thankfully, as a startup, we've already been able to show that with incredible partnerships, with not even being a year and a half yet. I think we're a year now, so we're almost a year and a half.
You mentioned amazing investors, actually, and it's really nice to hear that they do believe in this concept, that they do believe in and understand the problem that is actually exists on the market. Because like people are sometimes, like I feel don't understand that there is even a problem, especially once you talk like to white male, and they are not, because they don't experience that. And that is very interesting, because once you don't experience some of kind of a problem, how are you becoming aware of this problem, right? I think it's very important to start these conversations, and that you start these conversations with corporates. That is very interesting. And they need to also adapt, of course, and also their products and also their trends, right, to what is the market is there. Tell a little bit more like of those like shifts that you actually see among the like community side, corporate side. That would be amazing to explore a little bit more on this.
So I think that there's so many elements to that. One, I think the consumer has vastly changed. I think if you look at 5-10 years ago, it was a lot of brands stating how they want the consumer to interact with their brand. I think the idea of influencers really evolved, where before it was endorsements and celebrities and this, and there was a very specific model. Social media came in and fully disrupted that model. And I think brands in themselves now need to create relationships. It's not just followers. You want fans. You want a community that's really there to support and feels invested in your company. And one of the things that does, I think TikTok is a great example, where it's user-generated content. The things that are going viral, brands have to be a little messy about. They can't be so precious with, this is our image, because everyone online and everyone on social media feels they are a brand. So they want to interact with your brand in a way that's authentic to them. And being able to create experiences that leave space where you're not informing how people need to be, but you're just allowing space for them to be who they are, is a fundamental shift. And you can see that success impact is social impact. I think previously it was just a box that was being checked. As we move into like Gen Z and Alpha, their mindset is very different on how they approach brands and how they approach companies. So I do think that corporations are understanding that social impact is a must, that if you don't have diverse teams, your productivity does suffer, for the sheer fact that if everyone is in the room, comes from the same background, comes from the same cultural understanding, you are not building and looking at the larger communities. And women drive 80% of purchases across demographics. Men, people of color, when we're looking at who's driving culture, that's Black and brown communities. So when we're looking at these communities, if you're not looking at them as an end user, then your business is going to suffer. But it doesn't need to be the checkbox. And I think that's where you're seeing a massive shift. It needs to be authentic. It needs to feel like you're actually committed, because it's very clear now when people are just checking boxes to be like, we participated in Pride, or we're about the Black community. And we also actively look to partner with brands that are committed to that, because authenticity is really important to our success metrics.
Do you have, and I know you have some numbers to present. So can you talk a little bit about like how this really increase the productivity? How does it really like impact the revenues? I know that you did some research with BCG, Boston Consulting Group. That was also very interesting. Can you talk a little bit more like about like numbers? How do we quantify the problem?
One of the challenges is that there are no numbers. It's emerging technology and we're not looking at it. We can state it from just a visual aspect. You walk into a room, it's mostly white, straight men. There's not a lot of women. There's not a lot of women of color. There's not a lot of people of color. So from that aspect, we can say there's clearly an issue. But what we wanted to do with BCG is start setting hard data so we have something to compare to. So if we're in the first year in the super early stages, there's something to now benchmark. Are we getting better? And it was really eye-opening that you would think with all the conversations in STEAM, all the conversations in technology, that there's not enough female representation, there's not enough women, there's not enough women of color, that we would have seen an uptick. And what we actually saw was a decline. And that was mainly in the investing sector and then those reflecting management. So if you were a single founder, female run, the amount of money that you would be able to raise was 4% versus a male who would be raising, or a combined team. So a combined team, male, female, co-founder, was at 10%. Everything else was white, straight male teams. So it was very eye-opening. And then when you look at going to the next rounds, there was no reflection. I think the next round that women actually moved into was Series A, and that was representative of 1% of female-founded companies. So where we can obviously see huge uptick is within the investment sector. I think that also just comes from funds understanding that maybe what I think this is where it always gets like, if you don't understand an end user that is a woman because you are not reflected in that, you have no one on your team, it's going to be really hard for you to understand the value of perhaps a company that is being founded, looking at our solutions. What does that look like for us? And the one thing that I think statistically is fascinating is that when you look at the halo effect, those that constantly bring in, there was just a study done on CEOs and who were the most successful CEOs. And it was women of color are the most successful CEOs for the sheer fact that they look and protect and want to uplift everyone. It's not so, I don't want to say biased, but so biased in the fact that they have struggled so much to get to their position that there is a level of empathy, understanding, and teamwork to ensure that we are building together. And when the studies come out, it's really important to have that type of data so that we can look back and say, this is the reality. I mean, the data on diverse teams are 70% more productive than non-diverse teams. I think the number has actually gone up most recently. That analysis has been out for almost 7 years. We're finally seeing people really reflect and say, okay, this is necessary. But we have a lot of work to do. I think what we're trying to do with our company, there's a lot of companies also doing the hard work. It's not an easy lift. As you said, a lot of people don't want to recognize the problem, because that would mean that they need to relinquish a level of power. And we can just see that that's not a comfortable place. But we need to have a seat at the table. I personally just want to build my own table, and who wants to join, fine. But if not, we have our own table.
And depressing from one point of view, but from another point of view, like so inspirational, because we still have like lots to build. And yeah, Web3 is actually can make it happen.
There's a lot of opportunity. So it is challenging, but there is so much opportunity because audiences are not being spoken to. And there's a reality of development that can happen when we're thinking in other ways. And when you're looking at trying to onboard and bring larger communities in, it is absolutely impossible for you to lock out these groups. And if you are, then your success matrix are going to be lower, because your adoption rate will not reflect the global majority. And that's what we're looking for. We're a global company. Nothing is just in one area. You need, and especially with technology. How are you scaling if you're only, it's like the three things you don't do when NFTs were first launched. You don't speak to only the early adopter. You don't build anything that's so technical complicated that the average person can't understand. You don't build anything for 1%. These are the aspects that you're not going to be able to scale because you're only building for such a small subsector. I think previously everyone thought that would be reflective and it would move, and you're pushing technology onto people. We're not accepting that. We want to be a part of the process. As I said, it's a story, it's not a product.
And you mentioned something very interesting, right? The representation, identity as well. And how, in your opinion, Web3 might really change this, and how the identity can be perceived in Web3? Because we're starting to talk a little bit more about what you've done, like with your work in POC Lab. And there is a very interesting case as well with the Sandbox. Can you tell a little bit more about the identity in Metaverse and how it's can be?
So for our game Valley of Belonging, we've developed 2 avatar collections. So our first collection was focused on non-binary. So we ensured that, one, it was reflective of people of color. We also had prosthetics. So we did prosthetic arms, prosthetic legs. So we represented all the communities that we really wanted to show visual representation. You were also able to identify through a bracelet. So if you wanted to be able to say, I'm non-binary, I'm gay, I'm whatever your portion was, you would be able to, if asexual, you would be able to identify with that. I think that was an important moment for people to be able to understand that they were in a safe community. And we really started kind of pushing digital identity and allowing that access to groups that didn't feel connected earlier. Our next collection was focused on women of color. It was the Unity Squad. They were like superheroes. We also had drag queens, and just the energy of allowing that celebration of us and what reflected our company, and being able to look at communities and say you have a place. And with that, I think it was really exciting. And I do think that it's driven more people to think more of the relevancy of being intentional about what you're creating. We never got into it for the financial moderation. So I also think that's very different. We wanted to have people to have a space. We wanted to create something that was accessible, that anyone could join our community, and really through the game be able to play and understand what this space really is. I do think it's evolved substantially from last year to now. There's a lot more developers in the space. The space has gotten a little bit more serious, which moving away from the hype, which is necessary because we need to be developing solutions, not creating problems and then making solutions to them. We're not being so precious with how the technology needs to be. We're actually looking at how can we incorporate it. There's far less conversation about the tech, and I think everyone is aligned with the fact that technology shouldn't even be visible. And these were conversations we were having a year ago. So it's nice to see that it's a larger conversation, that we were able to inspire that and start these important moments, and recognizing that intention and accessibility is really important.
And how the future consumer will look like? So I know that you did also interesting another case as well with Walmart. So how do you see this in Metaverse and Web3 being, and also maybe you could also elaborate a little bit more, like how the consumer journey will be also looking like?
So I think our project with Cultureverse on Walmart was very unique. Walmart has a platform called Black and Unlimited. It's focused on supercharging Black creatives, really using their scale to bring careers, to bring artistry, to bring awareness to that next level. And so where we were able to partner, and it's fascinating, is that through innovation, marketing, and their cultural leadership side. So using that platform as a sounding board to what we were building for the 50th anniversary of hip hop. There was an authentic connection because hip hop is all about the creator. It was all about innovation. It was all about self-expression. And that is what their platform is also representing. So when you have those meetings and that kind of alignment in how do we bring Black communities, brown communities, those celebrating hip hop into the metaverse. The metaverse, you say it, people are like, what? There's still a lot of misconception. And the reality is that Black and brown women are the fastest demographic growing in gaming, that we adopt technology a lot faster, but there's not a lot of areas where you feel seen. And we did an influencer program, and some of the influencers, they'd never been in a metaverse, and they came out like, this is incredible. They're gamers, but this type of idea of a gallery, of a game, of being able just to kind of sit in an experience and learn all about hip hop, celebrate Black artistry, looking at brands that you maybe weren't aware of, winning digital wearables from iconic brands that really started the streetwear conversation. So I'm extremely proud of it. I think when you build something that's so authentic, we've been extremely successful. We're outpacing all brand collaborations on spatial, and I think that's part of it, the cultural relevance. Looking at the 50th anniversary of hip hop, having a partner like Walmart that was really about the creator and centered the creator, not the brand. They wanted to be about the mission, and they really partnered to ensure that we could build it to the scale that we wanted. We could have the conversations and the creators and create this place where you walk in, and I know you went and played, where you're just really impressed. Like, this is incredible. Most of the people that look at it, when I say, well, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary in hip hop in a virtual world, they're kind of like, okay. And the second I show it to them, their mind is just like, this is amazing. And I can do this on my phone. And that to me is where we start breaking down that conversation. Because for some reason, everyone believes the metaverse is only equipment based. So when you see it on your phone and you can actually play it, it starts moving the mindset to realize this is also just casual gaming. And casual gaming, I mean, there's 4 billion, 5 billion people on the planet, and 3 billion of those are gamers. It's also the reality of the attention economy. So we're in a creator's economy, but we're also in an attention economy. And who is holding the attention? And it's going to change consumer engagement, consumer interaction with brands. You are going to have a branded digital identity. And that doesn't mean that it needs to be reflective of your brand. And I think that's what I find so impressed with Walmart and the way that they've looked at all the spaces. Yes, they're a retail store, they're the world's largest retailer, but they're also a brand. So when they're looking at entering these spaces, is it aligned with our mission? Does it reflect what we want to do or how we want to be seen? And I love the fact that they want people to be like, Walmart, like making it look differently. And I love that aspect because they're really committed to testing and learning, understanding what it is, and they're leading where other people are like, let's see what happens. And this is a company that's like leading the conversation because they recognize the importance of that digital brand and your digital brand identity. And it doesn't mean that it needs to reflect the retail portion of it. It doesn't mean that it has to be a revenue model. It's how you're interacting and how you're allowing a totally new consumer base to see you. And if you can catch 11 minutes, and in some cases you're getting 2 hours of a consumer's attention, that's impossible. If you're scrolling, maybe you get 30 seconds. TikTok, you're moving through all of them. I think TikTok, you can probably get 90 seconds of engagement. This will be the future. Gaming, metaverse, virtual world, that advertising model, what retail will look like. There is that evolvement, and it is 1000% going to happen. And if brands aren't testing, learning, understanding, when it does, similar to social media, it was coming, and then it just tipping point. It'll be the same thing. And then you are now working behind and trying to catch up. And the way technology is moving, especially with AI coming in 3D document, it's just going to move so much faster.
Yeah, I actually spent more than 11 minutes there, I will be honest. First of all, I found that the UX is really cool. And it's like the whole experience is actually like, you don't feel like it's complicated, just like a game. But at the same time, you can learn about like the hip hop culture, right? So I was like really like, trying to understand everything, and was like trying to, like gain like those like points, like there was, and I think it's also like something that is cool that you can buy from that place, right? So you can just click and buy, and that's really changing the way how you see the commerce, like in general. I think it's incredible. It's an incredible project.
We have the expression and edutaining. So you're being educated, but you're also being entertained. So this is, I think, the key for us. We create experiences where when you enter, it's a personal experience for you. We don't want to direct or control how the environment and you are interacting. And I think that's what's most important. Everyone that enters has their own authentic experience, because it's not forcing this is what it must be. So if you don't want to play the game, you don't have to play the game. If you just want to wander, if you want to play the game, if you want to go and purchase, we actually have 2 different retail touch points. There's a book that's being sold actually on Walmart.com through Rock the Bells. They were one of our partners. And then we have the digital elements. All of these are really interesting data points for us to learn and understand how the consumer is moving. I love the fact that you said the UX is great and you were learning, and then you could play and collect. We have an engagement rate that's extremely high for the platform, and a return user rate, because I think people play and then they just want to come out back and hang out, because there's so much to it. Like the rooms, we have 8 different rooms, 8 different experiences. We have live panels. So we want to be able to highlight those creators and really give them their flowers, have conversations about technology. We have 2 generative AI artists. So we were looking at the first 50 years, but then what does the next 50 years look like? And that's technology. And we did a panel for Web Summit. It's the first time hip hop was ever a panel in the 20 years that Web Summit has existed. Hip hop has never been centered, and we looked at hip hop and branding. And so you're seeing that evolvement. And I love to be a part and leading those types of conversations, and extremely grateful for partners like Walmart that were already committed to it and are now committed to it in the virtual world, because a 4% adoption rate and 4% of Black communities in tech is really problematic when we know that they're going to drive that cultural and creative renaissance that we need within technology.
It's an interesting conversation. It's great to actually hear what you're saying, because Web Summit is in Lisbon, right? And it's those conversations happens here, like and it's really great that I am in such kind of like place as well. So many people are very skeptical, like about NFTs and like metaverse as well. Like, so is it possible to make the business model sustainable?
So I think the financial speculation of NFTs I'm curious when we move back into the bull market, what that rebound would be. I think the idea of utility and adding into it, I don't think the 10K model per se is really going to kind of move through. I'm truthfully watching it. I personally am very bullish on the functionality of NFTs. I think, unfortunately, the word has such a bad reputation, and there's just been so much misinformation connected to it that we don't even use it in our language anymore, just because it immediately sets people into a certain place. So we call it digital assets. We tend to shy away from it, but we also work with a lot of global public companies that when you say NFTs, it becomes SEC. So in that aspect, I do think it's still sustainable. It's an extremely important part of the ecosystem. I just think there's a lot of 2.5 solutions moving into 3, that when we're looking at like wallets and development and how are we reaching people where they are instead of forcing people to be where we are in the technology. And overall, I believe that everyone is pretty committed with making the technology invisible. So even having to say NFTs will hopefully move away, and it's just the foundational reward mechanism or the utility building community without it being so specifically just NFT.
And what advice would you give to those who are starting right now? Like, what do they need to think first once they are creating something that is the new project in Web3?
I think first and foremost, what problem are you trying to solve? What problems are they? Are you looking at an audience where everyone will understand it? Like, as I said, you don't build for the 1%. You don't build only for early adopters who have the insights and the insider information to participate. You don't build anything that's so technologically advanced that you need to be super savvy to understand it. I like to do the mom test. If my mommy doesn't understand it, then chances are most people won't either. And then not to be so precious with the way that it needs to be. It's merging technology. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to understand. You should have, obviously, a diverse team behind you. I think it's extremely important when you're building teams and communities that it's reflective and you're ensuring that there are other opinions in that room. So that when you're building, it's not just a kind of this is what it is and we all agree, that there's a little dysfunction, that there's a little challenging, that there's a little bit of like, maybe we need to break it. And most important, failure is just a learning experience. You're going to fail. Some things are just not going to work. You take your learnings from it and you go again, because it is really new. And even in the first year, like we can look back and say, well, that was a problem. But we also learned a lot of things from that. So all of it is necessary. How we move forward is taking those learnings. I think that what I am seeing is exactly that people are far more committed to creating products and understandings and bringing in communities without it being all develop a language and the tech at the forefront.
And what can we do more for, bringing different representation to Web3 and Metaverse? Like we as at personal level, each of us.
I think we have to be super intentional when we're looking at the way conferences. There was actually something that was posted recently where a conference made up women and put them on the speakers list. And they were made up women on the website, reflecting that, oh, we have women. When there are so many women that could have actually been on the panel. So I think, one, calling out that type of, to me, that's just crazy that you would make up a woman within this kind of element and climate where we are. Being intentional, and for brands to call it out. If you are trying to say a message of authenticity and ensuring that everything is reflective and this is your brand's mission, but then you're working with teams that do not reflect that, when there are teams that do, there has to be accountability. And we also, as women in the space, as people in color in the space, we need to be more vocal. If I look at speakers or any type of conference and I see there's no real representation, we have to be loud about it. Additionally, if there's opportunities that won't work for me, I immediately will bring it to someone else. And generally speaking, it's going to be a woman of color, because we need to work in unity together to ensure there is power in numbers. And the reality is we have the financial numbers. We are the consumer that you need. 80% again of spending is controlled by women. When you're looking at our spending power, it's the size of it's the size of countries, Spain. That's our spending power. So we need to be reflective in the development. And if it's not, then that's great, because that's just more opportunity for us.
And last words, what is like the next for POC? So what is like, will be what we are looking for?
Obviously, we'll continue with our mission. We have a few more like virtual experiences that we're building around key cultural moments. I'm not going to it's kind of secretive, but it will be the same kind of idea. But we really want to now look at the disabled community. I think that there's we love the fact that we're able to do prosthetics, but we also want to ensure that they're reflective in the games. There's a lot of technical kind of challenges because of positioning and just the way avatars are moving. So how can we move that avatar collection and conversation forward to ensure that there is something that's more reflective? I think body positivity also. The avatars in themselves, not just the games, but we have to start looking at ensuring that they are reflective. So 2024, that's something that's top of mind. We also want to hit on ideas that may not be like the key marketing. Like for instance, November was Hip Hop History Month. It's not things that brands are jumping on yet, but it will be something in the future that becomes very important. So we like to drive the early experiences. We like to drive the early conversations and looking at like what's coming up in culture and how do we create these moments where people are excited. We love Diwali. I think it's an incredible experience. Like, how do we bring that into the metaverse?
Awesome. Sounds really, really great. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think it's very insightful, and it's amazing conversation that we need to continue. And I would love to hear more from POC and from you as well personally. And maybe you come in next time to Lisbon as well. And we could record this in person. That would be amazing.
So I'll be there in the summer. And thank you so much. I love what you're doing. And it's always great to speak to another woman in the space and just have these conversations. So I appreciate the opportunity and what you're building, all the success, because the more voices that are speaking about it, like we're doing our part. But we really want to highlight and ensure that everyone is having these conversations. So for us, it's always about supporting the ecosystem and supporting the voices. Separate from me and my co-founder, the company in itself is so important. And that's really the mission that we're trying to drive forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much.